good morning, everyone. Welcome to another Wednesday. Uh, Relatively fine Wednesday here in the city of Philadelphia. Bit overcast. High today of looks like 61, or excuse me, 65. Getting a little cool tonight. Just some possible scattered showers throughout the day, but relatively nice. Um, Welcome to the Coffee Break Chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, executive producer of Light Thief Productions, he, they pronouns. We've got a great chat for you today. We're going to be talking a little bit about the incident in New Mexico, props, guns, blanks. How does a director of photography, cinematographer get dead on a modern set in 2021? Um, we're going to be talking a little bit about the lies that the Philadelphia Police Department told very recently and in historical terms. And we're going to be talking a little bit about who's hiring, um, and the Philadelphia mayor, the mayor's office's change in circumstance around some money that they guaranteed to a few people and a very important industry. Um, but first, we're going to talk to Dan Kim with Interact Theater. I'm going to pull Dan up on screen momentarily. Hang on a second, Dan. Sorry, I didn't have you in the right spot there. Pin you to the second screen. There you are. And welcome, Dan, to the show. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
Okay, my name is Dan Kim, he, him pronouns. I'm an actor, other things, stand-up comedian, singer, writer, various things in the Philadelphia area. And right now I am in a play called The Chinese Lady, which is going to be opening at Interact Theater in the first week of November.
Awesome, awesome. And the Chinese lady, please tell us a little bit about that. What's the plot? Where can people see it? When can people see it?
Okay. Well, first of all, the where and when. It is at the Proscenium Theater, which is located in the Drake Hotel building. It's on Hicks Street, which is right around Spruce Street between 15th and 16th. And we're running the first 3 weeks of November, Wednesday through Sunday, with matinees on Saturday. You can see the full schedule at the Interact website. And let's see. So that's the where and when. And the play itself is a wonderful piece written by a Korean American playwright named Lloyd Suh, S-U-H. And it is I would say, retelling of the history of Afong Moy, who was a Chinese woman who was brought to the United States to be put on display in an effort to sell Chinese-related merchandise. And at the time, she was pitched as being the very first Asian woman, Chinese woman, to set foot in America. And she was probably most noted for her feet, since she was possibly the first woman in the United States with bound feet. So that was the subject of much curiosity and interest.
Awesome. Um, it looks like we're having a little problem with our Facebook feed, so please excuse me for a moment while I try to suss that out. Um, Yeah, bound feet is an interesting detail um, that not many people know much about outside of Chinese and Asian American culture. Um, that folks have all sorts of opinions about, but don't tend to form these opinions without knowing the history of the of Bound Feet and what it was, why people did that, etc. What how does the Chinese lady approach the topic?
Well,
And what do you think?
yes. Well, first of all, our approach to the show and also the playwright's intent is not to be exploitative. We don't mimic or try to represent Bound Feet. I mean, B, who is a wonderful actress who couldn't be here today, who plays the Chinese lady, does not affect the kind of hobble walk that's associated with Bound Feet. So that's all understood, but that's not actually the focus of the play. Historically, in China, Bound Feet, um, it was kind of an aesthetic thing. There are various sociological theories as to why it was. When I was a child, I was taught that it was to keep women from running away, but I've heard other theories along the way. But basically, it was a practice whereby Chinese women, when they were girls, their feet would be broken and tightly bound into kind of this triangle shape. And that would be kept up until they were adults so that their feet would be instead of being, full feet, they would be like kind of squished like this and only being a few inches in length. And that was considered, at least by many Chinese, to be something that was desirable and beautiful. But as is true of many things like that, I mean, there were a lot of Chinese people who were against it and thought it was kind of barbaric. But it was definitely an institution. And I think at one point in Chinese history, women of a certain class, 80, 90% of them had bound feet. And that was a sign of class. I mean, it was the educated upper class women who tended to have the bound feet and the peasants who did not. The peasants had to work in the field or whatever, obviously needed, their full feet to be able to work. Um, so, but with respect to our play, I would say it's more of kind of a theme or a metaphor rather than actually the focus of our particular script and production.
Interesting. Um, excuse me, sorry. What other topics do you touch on in the piece? What is it? What's the general goal of the piece?
Well, I would say that the overarching theme of the piece is the white gaze or the privileged gaze, because Ah Fong Moy, in the play, I play Ah Tung, who plays her translator. But in the play, Ah Fong Moy is treated as a novelty, as kind of a circus act, if you will. And her survival depends on presenting a certain image to the people who are willing to pay money to see this. Um, so I guess if I were to sum it up, kind of in a short bullet, uh, it explores uh, the privileged gaze, and how to break through that and see the actual human beings beneath that what is presented, in a public forum.
Awesome. I think that's all very fascinating, and I hope folks do come to see your piece. I think it's important to approach all of these uh, these topics from a modern perspective, and really get a clearer picture, because sometimes in hindsight, things look a bit different than they did when first approached, and so it's interesting to look at the white gaze of the time period, and also look at how that affected the people that are involved in the story. Um, I would like to welcome onto this screen one of our regular commentators, Kent Darden. Kent is here with us today. Kent, please introduce yourself, your pronouns, what it is you do, You're muted, Kent. I'll fix it. There you go. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ken James Darden. I am an actor, writer, and aspiring filmmaker in the Philadelphia area. I'm currently producing a film with my friend James Jackson called Bladesman, which is a sequel to my previous film, Waltz. We just got finished wrapping up on the trailer, and James did a remarkable job. We're lucky to have him. And also, I am a martial artist. I'm a second-degree black belt in a freestyle crisis called TKJR, and I am an advanced intermediate level in Jeet Kune Do and Filipino martial arts. Also a poet. I'm basically what your starving artist who kind of like, I'm very interested in kind of like the job thing James talked about because I'm in that situation right now. But I'm a fellow artist in the Philadelphia area, and I'm very proud to be here.
Awesome. And so it just we have folks on all the time, and Kent is one of our regular commentators, like I said. So yeah, feel free to jump in anytime with any questions or thoughts that you have. Um, I know I'm very curious about the Chinese lady just because my mixed heritage. I have Japanese heritage as well as Black and German heritage. So I've always found the topic of would you even like I don't know if you would classify it this way, but I think of like this period during uh, was it about the turn of the century when this is set? When
It's actually set during the 1830s. The play starts in the year
1830s?
1834, and then continues, kind of in this super realistic way for up to the present. But
Hmm.
primarily, it's focused on the 19th century, the so-called century of humiliation for China, with the Opium Wars, with the British forcible opening of China, that kind of thing. I mean, that kind of coincides with Ah Feng Moi's life.
Yeah, and I find that there's this weird change from that 19th century perspective on Asian culture, Chinese culture, Japanese culture. They didn't really so much recognize Southeast Asian or Southern Asian culture at the time, but well, Indian culture to a certain extent was recognized. But there became a fascination with and fetishization of various Asian cultures, around the turn from the 19th to the 20th century. I've always found that a fascinating topic, but it is also interesting to see a piece focused on the time before that. So, if folks don't know the Opium Wars, um, I would, I guess you would classify that as a Cold War in modern parlance. Um, there wasn't like outright, like, there were a couple of blockades, naval warfare was part of it, but it wasn't so much armies facing off against each other as just social decisions and political decisions of one country versus many other countries. China made a conscious decision, I believe, as the Chinese government to, if I'm, and feel free to correct me if I'm getting any of my history wrong, I'm just going off the top of my head, um, to base part of its economy in the opioid trade, in the trade of
Oh,
opium.
well,
Yeah,
well, if I might just interject,
yeah, yeah.
based on my own admittedly imperfect understanding, the Opium Wars actually arose ironically, or not ironically, but surprisingly, out of the sale of tea China was closed to international trade, but exported a huge amount of tea to England and other countries around the world, which resulted in a trade imbalance, and which resulted in a weakening of the pound, of the British currency. And Britain, in an effort to even things out, actually encouraged and sold opium in China, which it got because it, colonized India and was able to get access to all these opium fields, and basically became drug dealers in China to make money to balance out the trade imbalance. And then that extended into the Opium Wars, which was kind of, that was part of the Century of Humiliation, probably the start of the Century of Humiliation, because up to that point, everyone thought that China was kind of this vast, unknown, mighty force. But then Britain was able to win the Opium War with just a few warships, and China was unable to respond. Anyway, but long story short, I mean, the Opium War was kind of a lead-in to the opening of the West that led to the eventually to the leasing of Hong Kong, for example, to the British, and it led to opening of the Chinese markets, international trade.
Yeah. What I was I guess the part that I'm referring to is kind of jumping into the middle of the Opium War. There was at some point, so there is the British sale of opium in China, and then there is the which at this point in history isn't an illegal thing. It wasn't, it didn't become illegal until the Opium Wars, because then everyone made it illegal so that they could have a reason to fight about it. If you look at popular, even British writing of the time, there's references to opium dens and stuff like that. The opium trade became a global phenomenon, and is still linked to this day to global politics and use of opium as a linchpin in global politics. So, yeah, and there was a decision by the Chinese government, as far as I recall, to openly trade opium, and bring it to Europe, and then that, as far as I understand, that because the British wanted the cornerstone, or the monopoly on the trade, was why the Opium Wars started, was because they were like, oh, two can play at this game.
I guess the way that I learned the particular history, it was that China wanted, well, it's not necessarily inconsistent with what you just said, but my understanding of it was that China basically did not want Britain bringing opium into China, and so it wanted to stop the opium trade in China, especially the British opium trade in China, which is not inconsistent with what you just said. But the way that I learned it, it was more like China didn't like the idea that Britain was smuggling in all this opium,
right? Yeah, they
kind
hated that
kind
idea.
of as a social ill rather than as competition. And that's why Britain sent warships in, was so that they could continue to send opium into China.
Was that because?
And go ahead, Ken.
Was that because they wanted to pacify the Chinese people, that way they could control them? Because at the time, Hong Kong was a colony. Did it have anything to do with it?
Oh, well, Hong Kong actually did not become leased to the British until the 1890s. So actually, in during the 19th century, it was, I think, just much more baser. I mean, I think they knew that opium was a product that just really sold. I mean, it created its own demand as more and more people became addicted, and it just produced a huge amount of money. I mean, I view it as a very mercenary thing. Was that, Great Britain just saw it as a way of getting balancing out the currency exchange.
Yeah, yeah. And what I'm referring to is, yeah, to my recollection, again, this is maybe a horrible recollection, but yeah, there was a decision to end the British trade by replacing it with Chinese trade. So basically, we're going to take every bit of opium that was coming into the country and export it again. Um,
Mm,
was basically the idea. Um, and then
mm,
yeah, and the British got mad at that as well.
mm, mm. Yeah, I can see that.
So that and this is also the age when you get a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment in the US. You get a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment in Europe. Um, the negative stories about quote unquote Shanghaiing somebody, kidnapping somebody and forcing them to work in your
Right.
transportation company, that kind of thing. So all of these have ties into this story. Um, uh, let's transition a little bit. Let me find my thing here. I wanted to talk to a little bit about just like the whole concept of like this period in history that this piece talks about. Um, is the period of the industrialists. You know, that you had um, mega industrialists who were the top 0.5%, 1% of population in the world, who controlled well over 60% of the world's wealth. Well, of the wealth in industrialized nations, and then you had the industrialized nations controlled over 90% of the world's
Mm,
wealth. Um, and it's the last time in human history that the economy looked pretty much the way it does today, with people so wealthy that a
mm,
small group of people so wealthy that it looks like that they can do whatever they want. You had very similar things in employment. It was an oddly echoey time for today's politics. There were many labor movements starting. It was a time when people were becoming aware that uh, individuals had individual and honoring individual rights was a thing that you needed to do. And you had, for instance, the labor movements in the railroads, because not even just the construction of railroads, but also the daily operation of railroads
sure.
was super dangerous. You had people losing limbs regularly, losing digits regularly, and dying regularly. Um, and you had a very similar, interestingly, a very similar condition to today where you had a lot of employers, industrialists, economists, what have you, saying that there was a lot of available jobs, and that there were a lot of people that didn't want to do them. Um, so to segue to today, just like to talk about, that the idea that nobody wants to work. There's this concept going around. Nobody wants to work. Everybody, wants something for nothing. Blah blah blah. And it's interesting to me to look back on the period that the Chinese lady looks back on and look at today and realize that it's not necessarily true. There's an enough of a gathering of power and information control into a small enough group of people that it seems like uh, a lot of the information we get every day is very propagandized. So you know, I've been pushing back publicly against the whole idea of a supply shortage um, and labor shortage. I don't see it from my perspective. I don't know, you guys, Kent, you were talking about, you know, you're in the labor economy right now and you're having difficulty keeping a job or finding a job.
Well, right now I had a great job interview last week. I might be hired for enough, but I remember when I was working for one Home Depot, they basically have a habit of hiring for seasonal work and then letting you go, even though you're doing a great job. Now, good news, Home Depot went up $1, what we do, but I don't think it's that people don't want to work. They just don't want to work that certain wage. I mean, it's good for things to finally go up to $15 an hour, but you know, if the price of living goes up, that $15 an hour might as well be $5 an hour back in 1998. It's just that we want a better pay rate. We also we want Medicare. We want benefits, and we want stability. I work jobs where they, oh yeah, we like you, keep up for 90 days, and then well, we decide we don't have enough for you. And people say, well, we want. Why are we working 40 hours a week and we just have enough money to pay our cable internet bill instead of our rent, food? There was a time 2 generations ago where you could, at least a generation ago, where you worked a 40-hour job, you could buy a house or at least rent. So I don't think it's just that the corporations, they just want to make a profit. I mean, yeah, COVID, a lot of people were opposed to when essential workers are important. I am an essential worker. You know, now, okay, I'm a starving artist, so I'm dedicating my life to my art, but I got to pay my bills. I got to get groceries. I got to keep internet and all that. But we also, there's a dignity to our work. We just want to get paid what we are worth. If a company wants to keep good people, keep good people. This is the reason why unions are important. Unions are very important. And I think, no, people don't work for workers. People have families. So it's just like, they say, well, we don't want to work. No, we just don't want to work that wage. We want to make it worth our while. And we know how important we are. It's just that now it's people at fast food joints, they've been complaining for years. Bring up the $15 an hour. And they've been complaining for years. Hopefully they'll finally get it. Well, we're going to lose money. No, it's just about greed. It's about corporate greed and treating people like numbers. I mean, there's no brainer here. And
No, I mean, you bring up a lot of the concerns there of folks that are in the worker side of the economy. You know, we've built this work environment where employers expect to have basically replaceable employees. You know, the where people are just cogs in a larger machine. And for whatever it's worth, folks don't like being cogs. You know, you know, you're getting a lot of pushback right now, where people um, want to be recognized as valuable and real, and as folks that are important to the employer when they are the ones employed. Um, does the Chinese lady touch on any of this, or is it primarily
Yes, it talks about many of those things. One thing which I honestly did not know before working on the play was that P.T. Barnum and other owners of circuses and various exhibitions, typically the people who worked for them and made all their money for them were paid zero. It's not like they were paid like subsistence wages. They were basically slaves, and they were expected to do, 7 shows a day, 10 shows a day, or whatever. And they were paid absolutely nothing, and were often very, very cruelly treated and abused. And the people who were in this situation, they stayed because they had no place else to go. And as for the broader social issues, this is also touched upon in the play. China had a lot of problems. I mean, beyond the opium wars and opium. I mean, but a lot of Chinese workers came to the United States because however bad it was here, it was better than what they had at home. And so the play does pay tribute to those thousands upon thousands of workers who came over, who were very, very badly treated, and not really treated as humans.
When you dehumanize a people, when any kind of group are dehumanized, that's when the greatest atrocities happen. That goes back to slavery, to immigration. We find a reason. America has a bad history of otherness. Those people don't count. They don't look like us. They don't act like they're not Christians. So it's okay. We look for a reason to hate, and we look for to subjugate people because we see them as human beings. We see ourselves. We don't want to see ourselves. It's harder to love, but it's easier to hate. And when greed comes into slavery, at the base of slavery was about greed. We get people that we don't have to pay to do our jobs for us. And then when slavery, we get these people over here, the immigrants, doesn't matter, was it Irish, then it's the Chinese, and these people, there's always immigrants, get those dirty people that we don't like to do the jobs. And sometimes, they're not like us because they were born here. They're like us, they don't look like us. And then when the corporation gets bigger, let's get these poor people to fight against each other. Let's get the poor white to fight the poor black. And let's get the poor and the fight black to blame the Chinese. There was a lot of Japan bash that was going on in the early 90s back in the day. A lot of people don't remember that, but back in the early 90s, Japan bash. I know it's the same, but when you say about people not seeing you human, we've all been victims of that.
Yeah, I was talking recently on Twitter. I spent a lot of time there. It's where a lot of modern political debate occurs, for better or for worse. But I was talking about the whole there is a conscious drive back towards chattel slavery. And if you look at things from the perspective of a person of color, of a minority person, you can see very, very disconcerting things in, for instance, the abortion ban in Texas. They're now going after LGBTQ marriage rights in Texas, basically using the same script. They're saying, "Oh, we're one of the members of the House of Representatives in Texas, basically wrote a letter to the Attorney General of Texas, asking." For his opinion on whether or not gay marriage had to be recognized by individuals in the state of Texas. In other words, if you're going into a hospital to visit your partner who is sick, oftentimes, or, like say they're having a baby or whatever they're in the hospital for, oftentimes you have to be a relative, especially right now during COVID protocols. Hospitals severely limit who can visit a person in the hospital. And this is just a light example. This is just a very, very light example of what marriage rights mean. But you having to be a married person, a person married to the person in the hospital, you have to prove it sometimes, and you might prove it by showing your marriage license. Well, if an individual does not have to recognize a gay marriage in the state of Texas, that means that every nurse, every admitting attendee, every doctor can choose whether or not to personally recognize the fact that you are married to your partner. Um, yeah, that's not tenable. This is the same as you know, being able to, having doctors be able to choose whether they recognize, if a person is a person or not. That's not. So look to bring it to the reality of the situation. When hospitals were segregated in the South in the 1960s and 50s, um, they were segregated because black people were not considered to be people. They were considered to be not the same type of human that white people were. So doctors should ostensibly be specialized to treat them. Um, this continues actually to this day, and into the 70s and 80s and 90s with indigenous people. There were specialized hospitals, schools, etc. for indigenous people in the United States and in Canada. Um, and so uh, just as an aside, I one day I had a parent-teacher conference. I went to school in the South, and in North Carolina, and I had we had the annual Thanksgiving play, which in the South in the United States every year is the arrival of Columbus and the Pilgrims and cowboys and Indians, and so I had asked, because I have a very small, minute amount of Native American ancestry, to play one of the Native Americans, to play the lead Native American, and this resulted in a parent-teacher conference where my mom was called in, and the teacher insisted that I had a learning disability. Um, this is the 80s in the United States. The teacher is insisting that I have a learning disability because I have Native American ancestry and I should go to a specialized school for Native Americans.
I remember you telling me the story when we were doing One More River to Cross. I remember this, and I couldn't believe I was hearing this. I mean, I believed it, but yet I couldn't believe it's still going on. So,
Wow.
Yeah. So, and so what this turns into, where I get concerned, um, is if Texas keeps going in the direction it's going. The other thing that they did this week is to what they're doing by establishing these legal precedents, these legal opinions, is saying that basically Texas isn't subject to federal law, isn't subject to where they can go is they can repeal every piece that hasn't been codified in the Texas Constitution of the federal Constitution and civil rights protections, and human rights protections. So unless it's explicitly enumerated, um, they have judges on board with saying that unless it's explicitly enumerated in either the Texas Constitution or the federal Constitution, that they don't have to recognize that as a right. The argument in this letter is that and so these are all coming from the same people. So the argument for the abortion ban, all of all of these bans, all these drives for any sort of law at this level have large groups of people that write opinions that try to, you know, establish a legal basis for why they're proposing a law. You know, laws don't just, you know, we had the Schoolhouse Rocks version of, you know, how a bill becomes law, but
Yes.
there's a few more steps before that. um, um, and the legal opinion, the person, it's actually an individual that's written these legal opinions, um, is that you know, these rights that aren't enumerated in the Constitution aren't actually rights, that the Supreme Court just made them up. And that's what's opening the door to the reversing of these things. So the next thing, you know, that's on the chopping block after gay marriage is the Loving v. West Virginia trial, which established the right to marriage for everyone who's a citizen. Um, and to just back up for a second, this all started with immigrant rights. So we've had this drive to separate immigrant rights from citizens' rights for the last probably 15, 20 years, where the Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that the Constitution applies worldwide, whether you're a citizen or not. The rights are the same for every human, making all the rights enumerated in our Constitution human rights, not just citizen rights. And anyway, and that's maybe an esoteric, weird distinction for folks who don't like get buried in these arguments like I do, but it's an important distinction, um, because when you have these separations of rights, these separate law systems, that's the wedge that folks use to get back to a system where uh, where not everybody is equal. And you're starting to drive. They're starting to drive this wedge. So it started with immigrant rights, and you know, and the famous poem. You know, they came for.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember the text right now, but you know, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't. And you know, I some people do speak out. Immigrant rights are important. Um, Gay rights are important. Women's rights are important, and they're all important because there can't be separate systems of rights for different people because we're all human.
I think the past 2 years we really seriously woke up. Even though we got a new president now, it's just that people like that, so we still have a system that put those things into play. We still have people who think that certain things are in play. I think we've all lived in our own little political bubbles where, you know, okay, we're all integrated happy here, but it's part of the country, but that's not the case. And there are politicians who deep down want to keep that system going. Now, some because they're deeply racist, some because they want to keep their money, and the best way to keep their money and keep the greed going is keep people hating one another. I mean, we're not doing what Trump is. Trump is the ultimate con artist, but he knows how to play on people's fears, he knows how to play on people's hatred, and it goes back to the otherness again. So with with children being put into cages, with pretty much Asian bashing and George Floyd, you know, we've woken up. We said we can't think this stuff's happening. It's happening, but now we got good news. We have a generation, and a younger generation coming out there said we're not standing for it. We're gonna fight. So yeah, we got Biden in the White House, which is a start. You know, he's not perfect, but you know, we got to keep going forward. I mean, I always urge people to vote, but I'm trying in my own life. I'm trying to like make sure not just write just a forceful post so people saw it. You got to do more. You got to vote. You got to get active. But I think we woke up. When people actually saw what happened to George Floyd, we said, had this happened. This cop literally lynched somebody for 8 minutes and didn't stop. And said, well, how this can still happen? And black people say, well, this has been going on for years. It's just that it's been nearly 30 years since kind of what happened in LA with
Rodney King, yeah.
Rodney King. But we've been saying this has still been going on. It's like a friend of mine was saying, like, when about owning guns, said, well, the guns, I had a friend I was talking to. She said, like, she's from Vermont, nice person in the world. She wants to carry her gun because she's afraid. I explained to her, well, you know, the gun rights would be different for me than would for you, because honestly, if you got caught with a gun in your bag and you're stopping the cops, she'll probably get a chiding and they'll say, okay, she's okay. But if it was me, even though I'll be a licensed gun owner, I'll be face down on the ground. It'll be cops will be like Call of Duty, 12 cops with guns shooting at me, a helicopter above. So, oh man, a colored man with a gun. We're not taking any chances. Like, it's just like, because there's a reason why that, because there's a system in place that's always feared the black guy. You know, he has a gun, and then every stereotype ever on television is going to come to pass, because that system has not look at mass incarceration. I can go on and on about this. Now, for the past 2 years, we're finally waking up to this again. You know, this didn't end with Obama being president of the United States. This only kind of brings it out. You know, so it's just like, when we get active and with everything about it, we can't just let this be a phase and go away. When you march for someone, you're not just marching for black people, just for Asian people, you're marching for everybody else. Because today it's just one group. Today it's the Chinese people. Then it's going to be the Mexicans. Then it's going to be the Muslims. Black people, we're like the if you want to break it down, it's like a subway system. You got the express and you got the local. Local is always running. With the express, you got certain groups. You got Asians, you got Mexicans, you got the Chinese who are being bashed. Black people, we're the local. We know that train is always coming. Not that any less or more thing. Bigotry is bigotry. You know, hate is hate. Persecution is persecution. But
well, they're all tied together. And I want to talk a little bit about. So there was an incident recently where a woman was sexually assaulted on a SEPTA train. There was she was raped on the SEPTA train, and the SEPTA spokespeople came out with a statement. The SEPTA police, not just spokespeople for the department, but the SEPTA police came out with a statement that there were multiple people on the train who didn't report the incident, and also who took their cell phones out to record the incident instead of doing anything about it. And what later transpired is that the district attorney responsible for the case in Upper Darby revealed to the press that he reviewed the security tapes from the car, and that actually nobody was aware of the incident and didn't do anything about it. There was an incident occurring, but if you've ever been on a SEPTA train, it was occurring in an area where it wasn't very obvious. There were people getting on and off the train, and nobody really realized what was going on. And nobody took out their cell phone to film it, which in 2021 that means that they didn't notice, because people would take their cell phones out to film it. And this is Philadelphia. People will tell you about yourself if they if they think you're doing something wrong. People will tell you about yourself. I've seen a lot of think pieces delve into the fact that, you know, the Philadelphia Police Department constantly issues statements that are just outright lies. It's happened time and again. It happened during the George Floyd protests. It happened after the George Floyd protests with the prosecution of one of the police officers, Joey Baloney. It happened with several other things. It's happened in incidents going back for decades, that the police department issues inflammatory statements that are designed to justify whatever the police department's actions were, or designed to create public safety concerns. Um, I wanted to get into a little bit about why they might want to create these public safety concerns, and again, this is just my theory, but I think these all tie together. The why, to me, is that the same separation, the same splitting of opinion, the same othering, uh, because police training is that there are, and this is police training that almost all police departments go through, is that there are wolf and there are sheep. There are people that are out to get people, and there are people that are just going about their day and dumb to the dangers of the world. Um, and the police see themselves as as protectors, as sheepdogs, and are or shepherds, and are willing to put down the wolf or stop the incident. Um, we'll we'll get into another day on why that never works. But what I want to talk about is the idea of creating two classes of people there. And that to me is why these statements exist. Just going back again to the Chinese lady, you know, a lot of, and I don't know again if this is touched on in the play, but a lot of the fascination, a lot of the touring of people, as you mentioned, P.T. Barnum didn't pay his freak actors. They were paid in room and board, basically. Um, a lot of the attention paid to people in these situations is because they are odd or different or other. Um, and for better or for worse, I think that we've perhaps started to approach a society where we don't treat people as other, and this kind of pushback, this kind of just blatant lie, seems to be an effort to um, keep that sort of separation alive. To me, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Wow. Well, there's so much in there to unpack. I mean, first of all, I have to say, I just think being a policeman is like really, really difficult, and I could not do it. However, um, I don't want to paint policemen with a police um, members of the police force with too broad a brush here, because honestly, I think it's a very tough job. I think that it is the greatest thing that has come along in the last several years is video recordings. Oh my God, Derek Chauvin, I'm sure would still be a policeman if there was not a video recording. Nothing would have happened. I mean, it was a god awful event, but if it was just a bunch of witnesses saying, "Oh my God, he kneeled on the guy's neck for X number of minutes," I don't know what would have happened. I think then people would have said, "Oh, but he didn't. He did this. He did that." But that videotape, man, that really, I mean,
This
overcame. Yeah.
this right here, I'm sorry to Black people. This is now our best friend, because we're saying when something happens goes wrong, we got video now. This is the best thing. Not to stereotype everyone. I know there are good cops out there. I met some of them in my last job, but this will save my life and will save James's life. Or like, because now everybody can video record anything. So it's just like, I mean, at least, I mean, I'm sorry I didn't help save George Floyd, but at least they got him justice. But going back, I mean, it just seems like we've always had a class system in society. And in every kind of civilization, there's always been the rich, the middle class, and the poor. But when a civilization becomes the rich and the poor, that's when you're in trouble. That's pretty much what happened to Rome. but everyone matters. I mean, we see it every day. I'm seeing a lot of gentrifications that's going along, probably in Philadelphia, in Germantown. Now, it's a good thing. It's also a bad thing. It's good they're making some rebuild those houses, but how many people can afford those houses? In Northern Liberties, they've been doing that for the past 10, 15 years. And it's about, I'm just wondering, again, they look nice, but how many people can afford to live in those houses? I mean, I think those houses are basically for the new young professionals who work in New York, because it's too expensive to live in New York City now. And the ones I do know who live there, they live in these small apartment buildings. And but they go back and forth by Amtrak from Philly to New York because it's too expensive to live in New York, or some live in Jersey. But it just seems like California. I talked to this friend I met a few months ago. She was from San Francisco, but she moved out of Philly. She said, like, you can't live in California now because the housing stuff is incredible, and their poverty and their homeless is growing and growing and growing. It could very much happen in Philadelphia. We do have homeless here. We had a homeless burst back in 1980s when they closed down a mental institution down northeast.
I hate to cut you off, Kent, but we got to move on a little bit. We're just going down a trail here, but I wanted to talk about what the police do well, which is document and investigate. As you both said, there are, individuals. The police department is made up of individuals, and there are people that do their job very well in the police departments. And that, the whole idea of policing, the whole idea of being an officer of the court, and being a neutral party in investigation is important, and having those people available. So the reason I bring this up is because there's an investigation into what happened with the prop gun in Alec Baldwin's production of Rust. So one detail that's just recently been released, a lot of people have been like, oh, why was there even a live round on set? And I'd like to touch on that real briefly. Just to clarify, only one person at all said in any sort of capacity that this was a live round that fired. That was included in a statement by IATSE 44. The statement was a statement of solidarity with the deceased cinematographer, and it was, just to explain that something went off. That statement was later clarified that by the same representative from IATSE 44, that when he said live round, in the industry, live round means anything with explosive potential. So they weren't aware of whether it was a bullet, like a bullet that you would use in a gun to actually fire a projectile, or a blank. He was just making a statement that there was gunpowder involved. This detail has been repeatedly mixed up, misreported, gone over, ignored, and I just wanted to bring that to the forefront. But details this morning, released recently, may clarify some things, which is the place where they were filming this movie is an area of the desert that allows for the shooting of guns, as using them just for target practice, or just to test fire, or whatever you want to do with your guns there. And that the crew and cast were using weapons from the property that they were on to go out into the desert and target practice during breaks and shooting. So how does a live round, in the parlance of gun advocates and gun control experts, meaning a bullet is in it, end up on set? Well, this is how. Sets are very tightly controlled. You never have rounds with bullets and gunpowder in them as part of your kit if you're an armorer, but if you're on a property that has live rounds that have bullets in them, um, it's possible that that gets mixed into your stuff, and it's very possible that somebody uh, illegally borrowed or against protocol borrowed a prop. And by prop, we don't mean something specially designed for filming. We mean something that is the property of the production. Um, and borrowed a prop and used it for target practice, and then it ended up back on set after lunch, and nobody cleared it, nobody did their job. It's just an accident waiting to happen. And so yeah, just wanted to touch on that. But yeah, so this job of investigation, this job of documenting is important, but it's done by a lot of different people in our society. And um, it is an important job of the police in our current society. And I just wanted to highlight that as, like what police do well that they do need funding for. Um, Anyway, it is 11:03. I apologize for going on so long. I want to respect everybody's time. I want to thank you guys for being on. If you have to jump off, feel free. I'm going to just go on a little bit about the other couple of topics that I wanted to touch on before I end the broadcast for the day. But thank you, Dan, for joining us. Where and when and how much is it for tickets for the Chinese lady?
Okay. I actually do not know off the top of my head ticket prices, but I can tell you that whatever they are charging, I think is worth it because I think it's an amazing production. We have an amazing director, Justin Jane. The actual Chinese lady, Jean Ngo, is phenomenal. I like to think I do a good job myself, but I won't dwell on that. It is at Interact Theater, which actually is in Center City. It's a few blocks away from the other big theaters in Philadelphia. It's on Hicks Street, right off of between Spruce and Pine. And it's running the first 3 weeks of November. We run Wednesday through Sunday with Saturday matinee and evening.
Looks like general admission tickets are 35 and student or industry tickets are 50.
Okay, then those are the numbers. But I have to say, I think this is a good one. I mean, well, of course, I always say that about shows I'm in, but this one in particular, my heart's in it.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Kent, for joining us. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Go see the Chinese lady at Interact. The Drake is a wonderful place to see a play at. Produced a thing or two there, so I know that venue is a great place to see a play at. But yeah, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your week. I'm gonna transition to just a shot of me. Feel free to stick around if you want to interject, but and I'll bring you back on screen, but just gonna be just me for now. Just to talk to you, audience, real quick. I wanted to bring up what having said that, the police have a valuable job to do in documentation um, and neutral neutral investigation of an incident. I wanted to say one of the things that they don't do well, which is stop crime. Um, Recently, there have been calls to defund the police, and defunding the police. Folks that argue with defunding the police are like, well, who would stop crime? Where is the deterrent for there to not be crime? And I'd like to draw your attention to a Louisiana high school that was having a string of violence. And a group of dads that call themselves dads on duty uh, decided to show up at the school, just be in the halls, and around the school, just kind of hanging out. Uh, they go to the school every day, and they are a crime deterrent. Why are they a crime deterrent? These guys aren't. They have no degrees in counseling or criminal justice. They're not. They don't. They're not experienced in dealing with criminals or anything like that. They're just dads. They're just dads, and that's awesome. That is the perfect deterrent to crime in a high school. Because they're just dads. They're there. They're cracking jokes. They're telling people about themselves, and they are what a source of authority that the students respect, and that they accept as a peaceful form of authority. So rather than having an antagonistic relationship with this group of dads, the students have a congenial relationship with them. Um, so, you know, people ask, well, what does a world without police look like? And it looks like this. It looks like a group of dads helping out in a school, community members looking out for each other. Um, and how do we get there? How do we make it so that a group of dads can be in a local school? Well, we give the school more money, and we take it perhaps from those quote unquote school resource officers who statistically only drive up the incarceration rate of the student body and the arrest rate of the student body, and statistically also increase the crime rate of the student body, ironically. When you have school resource officers, the crime rate inevitably goes up, and that's whether or not those crimes are reported. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, obviously, if you have a policeman on site, they're going to notice more crime. No, that's not what's happening. What's happening is that things that would be dealt with by the community in the school become matters for the police, and put those students into the criminal justice system, which is often not just and very criminal itself. I.e., see what happened in New York last weekend with police officers setting up a random illegal search and seizure of motorcyclists crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. But that's an interesting one. Feel free to fall down that rabbit hole yourself. Um, all of this is just coming from my perspective as a person of color living here in Philadelphia. One of the final things I wanted to talk about is the pending SEPTA union strike. SEPTA, the union that represents the surface lines, trolley lines, and the subway lines. That's the L, the Broad Street line, the trolley lines or green lines, and the bus routes. That union contract expires on November 1st, and the union has preemptively voted to allow a strike, a call for a strike, as of November 1st. As of this moment, it's just a negotiation point. They were in good faith negotiations with the SEPTA leadership, However, the union representatives said that they weren't getting anywhere in their negotiations, so the union members authorized a call for a strike. And if they do strike, SEPTA service will basically shut down within the city. There will be nobody to run the trains, buses, trolleys, etc. Um, and this is the time of pushback on by labor on ownership, and perhaps a little late in coming. I don't know how else to say it. Uh, there, if you pay attention to the stock market, if you pay attention to business, there's the concept of a correction in a market. Well, the labor market is a market just like anything else, and there is a glut of available jobs. In other words, a glut of demand, and a limit in the supply. There's very few available workers. Um, and so the market is going to face a correction here. Um, Over the next 2 to 3 years, I'm betting that we get much closer to bringing wages back up to where they should be just based on regular growth of the economy, and that we get back to wages being as a percent of the GDP closer to where they were in the 70s, rather than where they are now, which is similar to where they were in the 1900s. Um, yeah, yeah, there's going to be a correction, and a lot of the stuff that you see out there in business reporting, take with a grain of salt. You have a lot of people trying to fend off this market correction by raising fears of availability of goods, by raising fears of inflation, by raising fears of uh, lack of services, and saying and doing anything they can to try to make it seem like this is a bad thing. But our economy can't continue on the way that it has been going. And so I hope that this correction is peaceful and that we get through it in short order, and folks can start earning what they need to live. That's all I got for you this week. There's a few other things going on in the comments on the Facebook post. Sorry we're having trouble streaming to Facebook today. I will upload the recording to the event and link it there. Feel free to watch it in replay if you missed any part of it. Meg will post in the chat about it, and we'll try and make sure that next week the broadcast goes smoothly out to everyone everywhere. So you might see some test notifications. You will only see those test notifications if you subscribe to us. Please hit the like button on this broadcast wherever you're watching it. We're on Mob Crush, we're on Twitch, we're on Twitter, and we're on Facebook, and we're on YouTube. So pick a venue, watch us there, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel on that at that spot, and give us a watch every week, where we'll bring you more news, more current events, more news of the arts in Philadelphia. And we hope to see you next Wednesday. Have a great week, everybody.